Welcome to Pensar Basketball. Happy Halloween to those who are celebrating tonight. And we're ending off October on an analytical note because this channel is a lot about analytics and we've been doing a lot of film breakdowns with our film post game analysis. But I thought today was a good day to look at the numbers. We are 5 games into the season and the Raptors are a pretty young team. They're missing a lot of veterans and they have some veterans on the team. Davion Mitchell, I guess, is a veteran. Bruno Fernando is a veteran. These guys are young veterans, but they are veterans. And, Chris Boucher is a veteran. So you got to look at this from the perspective that young teams are supposed to, ideally, they're supposed to have veterans carry the winning load. And basically, the rookies and the young players are supposed to lose their minutes. And that's generally how it works. But that's not how the Toronto Raptors are working this year. So let's take a look at the analytics. This is going to be a pretty quick hitter. I seem to be freezing a lot on my end. Let me know if I'm freezing on your end. StreamYard's been going kind of crazy lately, but here we go. So we're gonna take a look at Gradey, right, leading the 2023 draft class in scoring this year. And maybe if we have some time later on, we'll take a little look at some of the stuff that was being said about Gradey last year, because I do think that it is pretty telling how we write off young prospects this early into their careers. So we'll take a look at some of the clips from a video from 11 months ago where Gradey was really struggling and we talked about it. So, I mean, it's important to realize that that does not mean that Gradey is the best player in the 2023 draft class. It just means that the vision that the Toronto Raptors had for him is starting to come true. He has been remarkably efficient. Let's take a look at how he's doing it, because I think that's also really important to realize, is that he has been remarkably efficient. Now let's take a look at just the year-to-year progression for Gradey. This is just a 5-game sample size. I'll stress that. But Gradey has had some of the most difficult shots in the NBA. His rim attempts have been super difficult because the paint is super clogged. His three-point attempts have been super difficult because he's pretty much the lone three-point shooter for the Toronto Raptors, with Immanuel Quickley and Kelly Olynyk out right now, and Scotty Barnes not shooting well. RJ Barrett not really that respected as a three-point shooter. Davion Mitchell shooting blanks. So he has had a really difficult time. You could make an argument that the fact that he is currently shooting 61.5% true shooting is absolutely crazy. Take a look at this. He has also upped his per 100 possessions to 29 points per game. This is up from 19 points per game last year. His rebounding is a little bit down. I expect that to come up, but his free throw attempt rate is up. So let's take a look at, free throw attempts. He's gone from 1.9 a game to 5.9. That shows me that he is attacking the rim, and we have seen it. We have seen a ton of finishes. We've also seen him not get calls. So I think this is just, it's going to go with it. But we haven't seen yet the evolution of a playmaker, but we have seen the analytical improvement. Take a look. Last year, he averaged 0.010 win shares per 48. This year, he has pretty much 10x that. He's almost, I'm not kidding, he's 10x his win share per 48. He is a much better player. His three-point attempts are down. And by the way, this is not due to some historical three-point shooting. He's actually shooting 34.4% from three. I think this is actually remarkably sustainable. Let's move on from Gradey. We're going to talk a lot. We're going to talk about Davion. We're going to talk about Ochai. We're going to talk about RJ. We're going to talk about Scotty. We're going to talk about all the players on this young team. But first, we got to talk about Jonathan Mogbo, because Jonathan Mogbo is the leader in win shares so far. Again, 5 games into the season. Let's not panic. Jonathan Mogbo is probably not going to win Rookie of the Year. But right now, you have a 31st overall pick, ironically, leading the entire draft class in win shares. And he is second in win shares per 48, right behind Donovan Clingan, a really good player. So, I mean, if anything, you want to take a takeaway from it, that means defense and rebounding from college to the NBA kind of translates, right? You look at his box plus minus is 3.1. That's insane. His per 100 numbers are actually pretty incredible as well. So if you want to look at Jonathan Mogbo versus Jonathan Kuminga, I thought this was a great way to just kind of put into perspective what it means to tank. And this is Jonathan Kuminga in year 4. Year 4, Jonathan Kuminga versus year 1, Jonathan Mogbo. And it's worth noting, Jonathan Mogbo is technically older. So it is a fair comparison in a sense. It's not really a fair comparison. You're comparing rookie to, second round pick to a lottery pick who is a 7th overall pick who's working in great spacing off of Steph Curry and Buddy Hield, and you're comparing that to Jonathan Mogbo, who's working with Davion Mitchell and not a lot of spacing. So I understand that, but take a look at how these players are performing. Jonathan Kuminga is a negative 5.3 box plus minus. Jonathan Mogbo is a positive 3.1. Jonathan Kuminga is getting a ton of usage, 24, nearly 24%. Jonathan Mogbo, he's just finding his own, 17%. Both are athletic. You could argue that Jonathan Kuminga is more athletic. You could say the Warriors would love for Jonathan Kuminga to do the stuff that Jonathan Mogbo does, but he's not doing it. Jonathan Mogbo has a higher steal rate, a higher block rate, turns the ball over less. He's getting more assists per 100 possessions. Take a look at that. More assists, more rebounds. He is clearing him across the board. He's been more efficient. He's been more efficient. And you know what's funny? He's shooting better from three as well. He's shooting 25%, while Jonathan Kuminga is shooting 15%. He's shooting better from the line. They both get to the line the same amount. 8.6 versus 8.7 per 100 is splitting hairs, but Jonathan Mogbo is shooting better from the line. Again, small sample size. Jonathan Kuminga is going to get better. Jonathan Mogbo is going to get worse, etc. But to give you an idea of how good Jonathan Mogbo has been, that's Jonathan Mogbo versus a lottery pick that some people thought was better than Scotty Barnes just 2 years ago. Now, this is what the Raptors look like right now. It doesn't look good. Now, for a team that is currently, now, shout outs to Bucknell Analytics, they created a model called the PEST rating. And the Raptors last year were not very pesty. They were 24th in the league. This year, they're third. They're pressuring the ball like crazy. There's a lot of speed and a lot of activity. It's leading to a lot of crappy offense, but it's also leading to a lot of crappy defense. The Raptors are currently 30th out of 30 teams in defensive rating, but they are ironically 12th in offensive rating. Doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense, but when you look at it, they're 28th in net rating. They haven't been healthy, fine. But you could argue that all that pressure is probably not helping their overall defense, even though it probably looks nice to the eye. This is what the Toronto Raptors look like under Nick Nurse when they won the championship. You can take a look at being top five in both offense and defense is probably a really good thing, right? The Raptors in 2018, 2019 were top five in both. And let's just take a look before we start digging into numbers like VORP and box plus minus and all that stuff. Let's just take a look at just what the Raptors are right now. Now, again, what did I say to you? Usually, it's your young players that kill you, and it's your older players that carry you. Well, Davion Mitchell, that's not really like in terms of win shares, the vast majority of your win shares are coming from your young players. Scotty Barnes has not been good at all to start the season. It's one of the worst starts to his season ever. It's largely due to that first game. The last 3 games were okay. The final game was incredible, but he's out. Okay. And we're going to talk about Paolo Banchero's injury, the Milwaukee Bucks struggles towards the end of this live. We're also going to talk about, all that stuff because the East is really wide open right now and the Raptors are a little bit better than you think. But it is worth noting that Gradey Dick, Ochai Agbaji, Jonathan Mogbo, Jamison Battle, these are really young kids. These guys are all under 25. Grady's 20. He's 20. Jakob Poeltl, the only guy in that group who's actually old. Everybody else is under 25. So the vast majority of your actual win, well, your one win right now, and really like your winning is coming from your youth. And that's important because that also means that a lot of your losing is coming from your vets. DJ Carton, Davion Mitchell, Bruno Fernando, like that's where your losses are coming from. Chris Boucher hasn't been great. So let's move on. Like this video if you like the pace of this. How about win shares per 48? No surprise. Immanuel Quickley, number 1. Jonathan Mogbo, number 2. In 9 minutes, Garrett Temple, number 3. Jamison Battle, Ulrich Shamshay in his 5 incredible minutes. RJ Barrett, Gradey Dick. I highlighted all the guys who are really part of your team going forward, and I just didn't highlight the people that might be out. But you can kind of see that some guys, Davion Mitchell is right at the bottom of this, and he's got like 136 minutes. Chris Boucher is not great, and he's at 86 minutes. Bruno Fernando has had 38 minutes. You could make a really good case, and I'm going to liken it to making a cake in a second. It's a pretty good analogy, that if you just take those 3 guys out and play your winning players more minutes, you're probably going to be like 2 and 3 at this point. You're losing, you're winning minutes in spite of these guys. I would liken it to making a cake, and then at the very last minute, it's like the perfect cake. You got the best cake in the world, and at the last minute, you swap all that sugar for salt. It's the worst cake in the world. You can turn the best cake in the worst case in the world by swapping one ingredient. And that's exactly what the Toronto Raptors are doing, in my opinion. They are taking a really, really good process, which is a lot of really good young players, and they're messing it up. And it's fine. It's fine. If it helps you tank, it helps you lose, it helps you develop, helps you play 4-on-5. It's great. But Gradey Dick is playing 4-on-5 every night. His shot quality has never been harder. It was so much easier last year. If you look at the metrics, his shot quality was much easier last year. Why is it so hard right now? Because it's harder to play off of a Davion Mitchell and a Chris Boucher and a Bruno Fernando than it was to play off of OG and Pascal. That just makes sense. But it's actually not that difficult to upgrade those positions. And that's the cool thing about this is you could upgrade those positions tomorrow. Right now, Dennis Schroeder is vastly better than those guys. Vastly, 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 vastly. Gary Trent Jr. is better than those guys. You let those guys go for jack shit. You let them go for nothing. And I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm not complaining about it. But I'm trying to explain that just because this team is 1-3 or 1-4 does not mean that the whole core is rotten. It is actually just certain parts, and I'm going to prove it. So again, points per 100 possessions. Immanuel Quickley, again, in his 14 minutes of incredible basketball, he was like doing all-star shit. But RJ Barrett, 39 points per 100 possessions. He's on a heater since coming back. Gradey Dick, 29. Scotty Barnes, 27. Again, Scotty's going to get much better than this. Scotty's probably going to float around 32, 33. But overall, those are your young players. Those are your core pieces. And Jonathan Mogbo scoring more points per 100 possessions than Jakob Poeltl was not on my bingo card. So that's awesome. He was kind of billed a zero-level scorer just like Scotty was, and he's doing incredible things. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is Davion Mitchell. I've caught a lot of strays for my talk about Davion Mitchell. I wanted to sort the 2021 draft class, a class in which Scotty Barnes infamously went fourth over Jalen Suggs, and a class in which Davion Mitchell went over guys like Alperen Sengun, etc. I will argue that Davion Mitchell at number 9 is the worst decision in Sacramento Kings history, or one of the worst decisions in Sacramento Kings history. I'm not saying the worst, because the worst decision is clearly picking Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic, but it is one of the worst decisions they've ever made as a franchise, because they picked him over Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Alperen Sengun, Moses Moody, a lot of really serviceable players. And I sorted the entire 2020-21 draft class. Any guesses where Davion was in this draft class? Any guesses? Clutch Tatum, Davion, my goat, bro. You're gonna need Kleenex after this live. Any guesses? So Scotty Barnes number 1, Evan Mobley number 2, Alperen Sengun number 3, Trey Murphy the third number 4. This is not surprising anybody. Clutch Tatum 28th, Brutus 24th. Okay, cool. 61. There were not 61 players in the draft class. Jesus Christ. Any other guesses? I mean, do you see anything here that feels like, wow, this metric is really not measuring accuracy? Okay. Clutch Tatum, close your eyes, because we're going to show you where Davion is in this draft class. Davion Mitchell is dead last among all 56 players who has played a minute in the 2021 draft class. Davion Mitchell is 56th. And if you're going to be like, oh man, wow, Davion's so much better than he was last year. Well, I got news for you too, bro. He's having the worst season of his life right now. He has gone from a negative 3.8 box plus minus to a negative 2.8 to a negative 3.4 to a negative 7 box plus minus. That is untenable. For a 26-year-old guard, he has been awful. Literally one of the worst players in the league. But y'all want to gas him up like he's some great player, and I'm an idiot for saying that. Now, he is a useful player in the sense that he applies ball pressure. But please understand me. He is massively over-leveraged as a starting point guard. He's not good. He's just not a good basketball player. Like, if you want to tell me that a point guard, a 6-foot point guard who gets lost off the ball, gets screened off, lost in transition, 59% true shooting, let's take a look at the per 100 possessions. I mean, just get an idea. His assist rate has never been higher. He's averaging 10.9 assists. That's double last year. Double. His usage has gone up, almost the highest since it was in his rookie season. His points, however, are not even close to where he was as a rookie. If you were looking for progression from Davion Mitchell, you are seeing a 3-point percentage of 31.6, 32, 36, 26. You are seeing 2-point percentage or field goal percentage of 50, 41, 45, 45, 41. This is not the recipe that you're looking for a 22 or 23-year-old rookie 4 years into his career. So when I say that his NBA career is on the line, Please believe me, I'm not stupid. Everybody in the league is seeing the same numbers I'm seeing. Now let's talk about Ochai, a tale of two halves, if you will, because Ochai Agbaji has pretty much saved his NBA career this year so far. Now, this is his draft class sorted out. Guess where Ochai is in this draft class? If you were wondering how you got an ex lottery pick 2, 3 years removed from being picked in the lottery, yeah, there's a reason you got it. He's awful. Okay. Ochai Agbaji has been terrible at basketball. However, Ochai Agbaji is 44th and he is climbing fast. I expect him to crack the top 25 in this year. Now let's take a look at what Ochai's numbers look like this year, because this is the type of amazing progression you do want to see. Look at Ochai's true shooting percentage, 66.4%. That's legit ridiculous. You look at his assist percentage, it's decent. You look at his usage, it's not high. He's still 15%. He's still a role player. His win shares per 48 have never been higher. His value replacement is flashing positive for the first time ever. His box plus minus has gone from, here's the thing, -3, -4.4, -3, -6.5 with the Raptors last year, which is the abysmal Ochai that you saw, which is not as bad as he was in Utah. Please believe me, he was much better for the Utah Jazz. However, there's a reason he was bad for the Raptors, because the Raptors were asking him to try new things, just like they were asking RJ and IQ to try new things, just like they're asking Gradey to try things that he's not comfortable with. They did the same thing with Ochai. Difference is, Ochai actually worked out. So Ochai this year has been a positive on offense for the first time in his life. First time in his life. And the only reason I would argue that he's even remotely defensive box plus minus negative is because of the trash around him. However, negative 0.2 box plus minus is a super respectable role player. Like, this is like a seventh or eighth guy on your team is perfectly fine to have this analytics profile. And again, it's 5 games. 5 games. It could all fall apart. He's not shooting 66% true shooting for the rest of the year. He's not going to shoot 42.9% from three. But take a look at his 3-point percentage through the years. 35.5% as a rookie, then 29%, then 33% with Utah. Again, you're not respected unless you're shooting 37% from three in the NBA on high volume. That's the only way you're getting any gravity as a shooter. With the Raptors last year, he was 21.7. This year, he is 42.9. My benchmark for him is 37%. If he can be 37% and continue to protect the rim the way he's been protecting the rim, if he can continue to be a versatile defender, if he can continue to cut, he will have a role with the Raptors for years. He has been awesome this year. I am so impressed. Let's move on. Let's talk about RJ Barrett. Someone told me yesterday in the chat that RJ Barrett was better than Scotty Barnes. So I decided to do the same thing in terms of value replacement for his draft class. John Morant, Zion Williamson, Brandon Clark, Cameron Johnson. This was not the super greatest draft class, but RJ was supposed to be a really big part of this draft class. Where do you think RJ Barrett is in this draft class? Any guesses? So John Morant is number one despite a lot of injuries. Zion is number two. I mean, Zion would easily be number one if he hadn't been injured as much as he was. But any guesses on where RJ is in the draft class? You're seeing 1 through 19, and he's not on this list. Where do you think he is? SP saying 33. Nope. Okay. Y'all never going to guess. Okay. He is 41st. He is 41st because he has played a lot of minutes despite being a relatively negative player. Okay. Y'all realize that RJ Barrett was 8th in his class in Rookie of the Year voting? 8th. He was behind Terrence Davis of the Toronto Raptors. Yes, undrafted Terrence Davis. He was behind Eric Pascal. Neither one of those guys are in the league right now. I just want to remind you that. But good news, RJ Barrett has gotten better, much better. In fact, last year with Toronto was the first year of his life that he was positive box plus minus. When people say RJ Barrett has been better with the Raptors, he has been so much better. That does not mean he's been a star. It doesn't mean he's been anything but he looks like he could blossom into a really good third or fourth starter. He could. He has some incredible skills, but you cannot start to overthink those skills because, again, in a depleted offense, you could look at a guy like Karis LeVert and say, that guy looks like he's better than Franz Wagner. Franz Wagner and Scotty Barnes share a lot in common, which is that they are very underdeveloped and incomplete offensive players, yet they have tremendous potential to become much more. Obviously, I think Scotty's better, but the point here is that just because someone is further along offensively does not mean they are better. Okay. RJ Barrett has been a negative defensively every single year. His analytics profile would tell you he's like a 10th or ninth, 8th percentile defender. He has maybe at best been a 17th percentile defender. He is not a good defender. He does not have the tools to be a great defender. He does, however, have the tools to be a halfway competent defender, which is the exact same thing I'll say about Gradey Dick. He has the tools to be, at best, a 40th percentile defender. He has to commit to it. He's going to have to get out of his head of Star J, Maple Mamba, all that stuff. He's not a star player in the NBA. Everybody in the league knows RJ Barrett is not a star player in the NBA. But it is important to realize that with the Raptors, he hasn't needed to be a star because Immanuel Quickley and Scotty Barnes are the clear number one and number two on this team. And if RJ Barrett is going to score 24 points per game, it's cool because it's going to be the most efficient 24 points per game of his life. It is important to realize that he is shooting a little bit worse from the field than he shot with the Raptors last year. However, he is shooting a blistering on 9 attempts per 100 possessions, which is the highest mark of his career so far. Two games, but 9.3 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, 50%. RJ is shooting out of his mind right now. And that's with a shoulder injury. Has he really blossomed to this kind of shooter? Because if he has, his NBA trajectory has changed completely. Now, consider maybe could he be Michael Porter? Could he be the Michael Porter? Could Jamal Murray be the Immanuel Quickley? Could Scotty Barnes be the Nikola Jokic? Like, could that be the dynamic between these three guys? Because if RJ Barrett can shoot like this, now I'm not saying he's going to shoot 50%. He'd be Steph Curry if he could shoot 50% on 9 attempts. Can he shoot 40% again? Because he shot 39% last year. RJ Barrett with the Raptors has been a monumentally different shooter. And that changes the complete trajectory of who he is. I do think there's still a chance. Again, don't kill me. Don't shoot the messenger. That he becomes more of a sixth man scorer like Karis LeVert if he doesn't figure out the defense. Because as I mentioned in yesterday's live, it's really difficult to build a championship roster or even a competent playoff roster with two wings who can't defend. At least two wings who can't defend at a high level. Ochai is probably the benchmark of like the worst you have to be a defender in the NBA. Scotty Barnes is like not the greatest defender in the world, but he's like Tatum. You know what I mean? Like he's 85th percentile. He's solid, right? Neither one of these guys are Herb Jones. Neither one of these guys are like, they're not Rudy Gobert. They can't single-handedly elevate your entire defense. So I think that it's important to realize that at some point, if RJ doesn't figure out the three-point shooting and the defense, he will probably become a bench player at his next stop. So I really hope for his sake that he turns it around. But he looks like he's on the path right now to being a really, really good player for Toronto Raptors. Now, some good positive analytics. Value of replacement, Immanuel Quickley. He is just behind Tyrese Maxey, LaMelo Ball, Desmond Bane, Anthony Edwards, and Tyrese Halliburton. But you know what? He didn't get talked about like those guys. He doesn't get talked about like those guys. But I suspect that at his best, he could be better than LaMelo Ball. Having watched LaMelo Ball quite a bit, having, noticed all of the injury issues and stuff, I know LaMelo Ball is way more talented. He's basically, Immanuel Quickley has played way more games than Tyrese Maxey. He's played way, way more games than LaMelo Ball. He's played more games than Desmond Bane, and yet those guys are way ahead of him. He's played more games than Tyrese Halliburton, yet Halliburton's doubled him, more than doubled him. So I understand that Immanuel Quickley is not as talented as the guys ahead of him. However, he may end up having a career closer to Desmond Bane than we realize, at which point the $35 million, $32.5 million actually makes a lot of sense. But I do think Immanuel Quickley is blossoming. Now, I'm not going to flash his individual stats, but I do want to say with the Raptors, he handled the basketball more. He was a much more dynamic player and is projecting to be much more of a second option with the Raptors. So I have like a lot of positive hope for Immanuel Quickley. Here's the rest of that draft class, just so y'all know. And there's a couple of familiar Raptors in terms of value of replacement. There's a Precious Achiuwa at 44. There's Malachi Flynn at 46. And then there's Jordan Nwora at 50. And Jordan Nwora is out of the league. I believe Zeke Naji or Kira Lewis Jr. is probably out of the league. This is the, Malachi Flynn's out of the league. So just to give you an idea what it means to be at the very, very bottom of your draft class in terms of value of replacement, like it means the same thing for these guys as it means for Davion Mitchell. It means your NBA career is on the line. Okay. All right. Are you guys appreciating the pace of this? I feel like we've been pretty fast. All right. That's the end of that. Let's get to some Twitter stuff. Hang on. Exit full screen. Hang on. Okay. Pulling that off. Okay. I want to share with y'all something that I noticed yesterday. And I was some people are doing some victory laps on what they said about Grady way back when. I wanna let y'all see what I said about Grady way back when, because this is exactly 11 months ago, and this was very interesting. I was surprised. Okay. Also, breaking news: Paulo Banchero is out 4 to 6 weeks, and he will be reevaluated then. He has a torn right oblique, so that is devastating news for Orlando Magic fans. I you never want to see that with a young player. Here's a little bit of trivia for those of y'all who don't follow us on X. This is kind of cool, actually, and this is a really good omen for us getting Cooper Flag next year. Did you know that Gradey Dick is the first Grady in NBA history? Did you know he's also the first player who has Dick, like his last name being Dick? He's the only player with the last name Dick in NBA history. Jacoby Walter is the first Jacoby in NBA history, but he's also the first Walter last name in NBA history. There was Walter McCarty, if you remember, but no one with the last name Walter has ever played in the NBA. Jonathan Mogbo is the first Mogbo in NBA history. Jamal Shed is the first Shed in NBA history. Ulrich is not only the first Ulrich in NBA history, but he's also the first Sean Shed in NBA history, which is cool because you know who else has never played in the NBA? A Cooper. There's no player with the first name Cooper in NBA history. Cooper Flag will be the first. And there's also no player in NBA history named Arias. So Ace Bailey will also be the first Arias in NBA history. There's never been a Flag in NBA history. There's also never been a Kaman or a Kaman Malawak or a Malwak. It's very interesting as the league expands and as people use Zigsaw Puzzle saying, are we going for first timers? Well, we went for Scotty Barnes, and Scotty Barnes is definitely not a first on either front, but he is the first Scott Wayne Barnes in NBA history. I'll give you that much. Okay. So I just thought that was interesting trivia. Call that a sidebar. Here are the Eastern Conference standings. Notice something? A lot of teams that were supposed to be good are really ass right now. Now the Detroit Pistons were supposed to be bad, but other than them, nobody has really fulfilled. I mean, I guess some people thought the Raptors were supposed to be ass too, and I guess they're 1-4. But I would argue the Raptors should be 3-2. You call me a homer all you want. I don't care. I don't care. I watch these games. The Raptors should be 3-2. The Raptors should have won that frigging Charlotte game. Do y'all realize that we won the Jakob minutes by 18? Jakob was plus 18, but in the 13 minutes he sat, we were negative 23. And in those 13 minutes, 3 of those, Bruno Fernando played, and we were negative 10. You see what I'm saying? Bruno Fernando is the salt in your cake. Make that a quote. Make that a t-shirt. Say, Bruno Fernando is the salt in my cake. Okay? Because that's basically what he is. But it does present a very interesting thing. With Paulo out, Orlando is not able to sustain offense. They're going to fall in the. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to fall, but they could fall. Miami's a mess. Washington's going to start tanking. Charlotte's going to start tanking. You see what I'm saying? Like it's weird. Like the Raptors have had abnormal like injury luck, and there's still a chance they could end up 10th. That's the craziest part. Okay, doing that. Where are my victory laps on? Here's the box score from last night. To those of you, we didn't share this box score, but this is the box score in terms of last night. Jameson Battle had his worst game last night, negative 18 box plus minus. He was really ass. Like you could feel it. And we did not get a lane call in last night, probably for that reason, because Jameson Battle had a really tough game. But this happens with rookies. Grady had this too last year. Bruno Fernando was predictably Bruno Fernando. Davion Mitchell, for all y'all saying he was so great. Yeah, eye test says, he made life very difficult for the LaMelo Ball. But eye test also said he made life very, very difficult for the Raptors at times as well. So Jamal Shed, first positive box plus minus game, which was very, very cool for him. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that was one of his first, or it was either his first or second positive box plus minus game. I thought that was great. And it matched the eye test too. Jamal Shed just stood out to me like I could not believe yesterday. So, that second quarter of his, if we just isolate that second quarter, he was like a 10 box plus minus in that second quarter. And where are we at? Okay, here we are. Okay. So this is the let's say, okay, so this is the first thing I said about Gradey being 6'8". His height is supposed to be a high ceiling pick. Yes. Yes. I think Grady's ceiling is very high. His abilities as a pick and roll ball handler as they develop, being 6'8", his height is such a huge advantage as a playmaker, and to be able to shoot the way he's able to shoot. And again, he's holding water defensively. He's not good. He's not the worst defender in the NBA. He's just bad, right? Like if I were to rank him out among defenders who are role players, I would say he's about a 25th percentile defender right now. With his physique, that to me projects that in his peak, he will be like a 55th percentile defender. That's more than decent. It's more than decent. He will probably be a better defender than Gary Trent Jr. in his prime. I'm almost positive of that. So, yeah, again, size. You can't teach size. You have size here. This is definitely a long-term pick. As his body develops, as his physique develops, as his game develops, I think you could see rapid acceleration. Don't be surprised by his third year if he's averaging like 22 points per game. It could happen like that. Okay. Deshane asking, didn't like what I said on Twitter. What did you say on Twitter? I have no idea what you said on Twitter. Okay. And here's the first thing. So again, this was comparing. So again, this is when Gradey was being terrible, right? He was having awful, 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 nights. He was struggling to score. He was shooting blanks into the ocean. And we had this live 11 months ago. You're free to go check it out to confirm I'm not lying. 11 months ago, we had this live where we compared a lot of his. Sorry, I'm confused. Deshane, can you please tell me what did you say on Twitter? I have no idea what you're saying. Also, someone asked for a call-in link. I have posted the call-in link in the chat. If you would like to call, you could definitely call. Here, I'll post it again for you. There you go. You want to call? Call in. I'm gonna have some discussions about analytics. We can definitely do that. We're probably gonna be out of here in an hour, but we have some time. Okay. Okay, let's check this out. Correct. This is Dirk Nowitzki in 1999. A very, very skilled, but ultimately very culture shocked, very scrawny, very physically outmatched small forward. They started him at small forward. Please understand, Dirk was not banging around with centers. He started at small forward. I remember watching the first 20 games of Dirk Nowitzki's career and thinking he was the biggest bust in the history of busts. That's my honest opinion. When I watched it, I didn't get it. But around the 25 game mark, I think I watched a game where I was like, oh, this guy has a chance. One game. That's all it takes. One game. Grady's already had that game. Look, man, I'm going to tell you something that may surprise you. These negative 30 games are a really, really good indication for me. Okay. They're a really good indication. You have a player who is trying things that he physically cannot do right now. In the case of Kobe, in the case of Dirk, in the case of, and I don't want to compare Gradey Dick necessarily here, but like the case of Jermaine O'Neal, the case of Kevin Garnett, when you look at these guys, honestly, they were not physically ready for the NBA. You could probably, I mean, I haven't looked at Tracy McGrady's, but I'm sure it's something very similar. There's a lot of variance. Okay. So not just victory lapping. Obviously, I'm partially gloating because there's a lot of people who said, no, Rob, Keontae George. No, Rob, Jalen Hood Shafino. Hood Shafino is probably going to be out of the league next year. That's how bad he's been. Keontae George is leading one of the worst offenses in the NBA. Well, that's not fair to say. He's been not great. He's been not great. All the stuff that was there in his college tape is showing up now, right? So this is not necessarily about having pace, but faith. It's a cautious reminder of how much can change in 11 months for a young player who's working hard. Ochai Agbaji was written off by myself and a lot of people this summer. He has come back and he's been a massive revelation. Do the Raptors have three role players that they weren't counting on in Jamal Shed, Jonathan Mobo, and Ochai Agbaji? Yes. That is a massive roster boost. Teams would trade multiple firsts to get three young, really good role players with significant upside. And you just got it for one first round pick and a couple seconds. That's finding value. That's winning on the margins. So now the question is, what would happen to your win total if you stop playing Bruno Fernando and Davion Mitchell? What would actually happen? Right? Like, what would happen? Because every single game, the Raptors are like losing the 3-point margin by crazy amounts. They're giving up tons of points to centers in the paint because they can't contain any penetration because they're trying to use, frankly, they're trying to use this pressure attack defense, which is just gimmicky. It's just gimmick. It's like the thing Nick Nurse did, right? The intention, however, is very different. You're trying to make players better defenders, right? By forcing RJ to really pick up high and guard his man, Mig, all that bullshit. I mean, look, I'm smart enough to know that what Darko Rajakovic is doing is kind of bullshit, right? Like I understand it's not designed to win games. No team in the league would look at your roster and say, you know how I'm going to win games with Bruno Fernando and Chris Boucher back there, not Rudy Gobert. Bruno Fernando and Chris Boucher, you know how I'm going to win games? I'm going to have RJ Barrett pressuring the ball 28 feet. No. You know how I'm going to win games? I'm going to have Davion Mitchell standing at the 3-point line unguarded for like 34 minutes a game. No, you will never win a game. You cannot win games this way. You literally can't. Deshane waves with a super chat. Thank you very much. Deshane, did you get my earlier message? What did you say on Twitter? It's kind of like, it's just, I'm trying to figure it out. Like, what did you say on Twitter that you're saying you didn't like what I said on X? I'm trying to understand. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. My question is, what happens if you were to change one variable? Literally one variable. That's all. I mean, get healthy, of course. Scotty comes back, RJ comes back, IQ comes back, Bruce Brown comes back, Kelly comes back. But what if you just changed one small thing? Okay. What if you traded for Walker Kessler? You know what I mean? Like a real rim protecting big. What if you did that? Now, I don't know what it would cost. I really don't. I'm not like guessing what Danny Ainge wants for him. I'm assuming it starts with at least a first round pick and maybe a pick swap. It might include two first round picks, but would you do it? Would you do it? With the East wide open, adding one more young player to this core of already super young players, I mean, you would be the youngest team in the playoffs, wouldn't you? You would be, right? Oh, that was you about Davion. Yeah, but that's that was disingenuous because what I said in the live was not a change of heart. That's how I've always felt about him. I mean, I feel better about him, but you can probably see from the context of this live that I haven't changed my mind at all about Davion. Davion is what Davion is. But I did not realize that was you. So that's cool. Bro, if we didn't have Yak, we would have been blown out by the Hornets and Nick Richards would have gone for 30. True. True. 100% true. My question is, what if you had Yak and Walker Kessler or Yak and a really competent backup big, right? Plus a healthy roster. Would you stack up? Would you stack up against New York? Do you trust yourself against Milwaukee? Or do you feel like you'd be screwed? Because I don't think Scotty's played well this year. I really don't. I don't think Gradey has even showed like the tips of his potential because, and that's pause. Okay. I don't think that Gradey has even touched his potential because Gradey will be better with better players. Grady's going to be better with a good Scotty shooting threes. Grady's going to be a much better player. How much younger do you want to get is the question. How much younger do you want to get? You have a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old who have all-star potential, one of whom has already been an all-star. You have a 24, how old's Immanuel Quickley now? Is he 25 yet? Just turned 25. So you have a 25-year-old that I project will have sub all-star impact to some extent, right? And you got RJ Barrett, who some people think is better than the all-star who was 23 last year. So, like, and if you get Walker Kessler into the mix as well, and you get a draft pick this year, like how many young people you want? You know? So that's kind of the question. And then you got Jonathan Mogbo, and you got Ochai Agbaji, and you got Jamal Shed. So you got the role players too. Damn. This is a sneaky good young core that is losing because you got salt in your fucking cake. That's it. That's what it is. How do you feel about Gigi Jackson? Love him. Love him. You have no idea how much Larry Nance would help. You literally have no idea. The gap between Larry Nance and Bruno Fernando is like the gap between me and Fred VanVleet as a basketball player. Darko saying, Rob, what are some young centers we can realistically get for the backup position? Well, certainly, I think Walker Kessler. Okay, we got Lil John. Lil John, what's going on, man?
How you doing, man? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. What's going on?
It's just hard to imagine like how there is a very realistic world that we could be 3-2 right now and getting ready to play the Lakers and the Kings on a back-to-back, and it would be like a really fun weekend.
Right.
That was very possible. That could have easily happened, and now it's 1-4, and we're already thinking about the lottery.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I did the Tankathon thing as a joke. I mean, obviously, I'm not pulling the white flag on this season after a 1-4 start. I'm very familiar with a lot of teams that have gone on to be really good. I don't think Milwaukee Bucks are panicking. They're 1-3, 1-4 right now. I think they
It
just
should be.
lost tonight. They just lost tonight to somebody. So
They should be panicking.
they should be panicking because they're old. That's the difference. They're old and they're bad.
Old.
Right? So we're young and we are losing games because of some of our oldest players. Like every player who's really costing you wins is 26 or above.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the gap between a Nick Claxton and a Bruno Fernando? How hard would it have been to get a Nick Claxton? I don't know. Like, I don't think the pieces we need are that hard to get. It would be like okay, like the Spurs, right? Like the Spurs right now. If they really if you put a gun to Greg Popovich's head and said, you got to go win 50 games right now, or we're gonna I don't know, relocate your franchise, they could do it. Really, they could do it. They could change certain roster things. They could trade a few first round picks. They can go for 50 wins right now. And they could just simplify Wemby's role, tell him, hey, Mr. Alien, stop shooting step back threes from the logo and get your ass in the paint and just be a lob threat and just block shots. And they would win a lot of games. There are just so many teams that are losing games by design, and everyone is just not realizing it.
Yeah, they're content with it. I understand what you're saying, but it's kind of.
I don't think it's content with it. They're doing it by design. I mean, right now they own the Atlanta Hawks pick. The Atlanta Hawks have been bad and they're injured. They also own their own pick. Do you realize there's a world in which the 2024-2025 season ends and the Spurs are like the second worst team, the Hawks are the fifth worst team, and we do the lottery and the Spurs get the top 2 picks? Can you imagine Wemby with Ace and Cooper Flag? Because it'll happen with Stephon Castle. Like, they have a big vision for the future. So I'm kind of curious at this point, do the Raptors have a similar vision? Because right now, all these young players that have become like awesome role players, they're not going anywhere. They're under contract. Bless you.
Thank you. I absolutely think besides thinking long term. I don't know if you saw, like last week he was at the Rutgers game with Sean Marks.
Yep.
Like
Made a laugh about it.
he's already like besides he thinks 10 steps ahead. Like
Mm.
he probably was preparing for like a freak injury. Like that's how
We haven't
locked
had
in
one
he.
freak injury. We've had 3
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's the craziest part.
to
Uh,
all our
what
best players.
I know it's crazy. Like by the way, I absolutely see improvement with the team in Darko. Like if you're not seeing that, then we're not watching the same games because this team is greatly improved from last year.
Yeah,
Greatly. I do want to ask you about RJ.
sure.
It feels empty status. I know people can say yes, the efficiency is improving and in the decision making and the passing, but I don't know. It's year 6. The free throws are still an issue. The defense is still an issue. Like, what are you seeing?
I'm seeing Karis LeVert. I'm
That's what I'm
seeing
saying. I'm
Larry
seeing.
Hughes. I'm
That's what I'm
seeing,
saying.
that player type. And I'm hoping that with a slight lift in the playmaking and a slight lift in the defense, that he can shift and become like better than that. Because currently, Karis LeVert is a major contributor on the best team in the East right now. So there is a role for a scorer. Totally. Like Lou Williams was probably a top 3 scorer on every single team he played on. I think Jamal Crawford was a top 3 scorer on every single team he played on. Neither one of those guys started. People need to understand like there are scorers, bucket getters, whatever, but they give up a lot. Lou Williams is a bad defender, Jamal Crawford bad defender, right? The offense, like your starting lineup cannot sustain minutes with really terrible defenders. Now, if the terrible defender has a role on defense, like Jokic, where he's a great rebounder, like if RJ could become like a 10 rebound per game guy, maybe he could sustain himself in a starting lineup. So that's where I'm a little bit like, and obviously if I look at the future of RJ versus Grady, I mean, it's not close. It's not that close at all.
It's not close. I'm not even like the highest guy. Like I'm high on Grady. I'm just not. You know, I don't see all star for him, but I do see a nice, pretty high level starter.
Mhm.
But I don't even see high level starter for RJ. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess it's plausible if the defense improves, but I don't believe the defense will improve. It's he has a DeMar DeRozan issue. He's like flat footed. He's kind of heavy. The free throws is a big time issue. He's shooting in the 50th percentile as a Raptor. It's in the 50s. Like at a certain point, like you kind of are who you are. And again, you're calling him a scorer. He scores in certain ways. He's not like an isolation guy or pick and roll ball handler. He is dribble handoff guy, cutting. He's not even that good of a scorer. It's very particular ways he scores. It's not like true authentic scorer. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. People see 25 points per game, they go nuts, right?
Yeah,
Cam Johnson.
they
I mean,
think it's
I feel like
bag stuff.
if Cam Thomas was on this team, there would be a 10% of Raptor fans saying he's the best player on this team. I'll
Oh yeah,
guarantee it.
oh yeah,
Like
absolutely.
actually it would be more than 10%. It'd be like 30%.
Oh yeah,
But the rest of the league knows that he's not. The Brooklyn Nets know he's not. He didn't get a contract extension. People don't value empty calorie scoring, and fans do. I don't know why that divide exists. I don't know why I have to lose my mind on a live yesterday. I got like really upset because there was this guy Rue who was like, "No offense, I think RJ's more prepared to be the man than Scotty," and I was just like, "Oh God, like, here we go again." We
oh
got
my god.
we got the number one guy in the 2021 draft class going up against the 41st guy in the 2019 draft class, and this guy thinks it's a fucking comparison. There's no comparison. They're very different players.
God.
RJ does certain things better than Scotty. Like he does. Like like I think he has a faster first step than Scotty. Like, would you agree with that?
I think he attacks the paint better.
Yes. He has like that sort of slipper. He just navigates tight gaps better than
Yeah,
Scotty,
his shoulder,
right?
like the way he gets his shoulder down is really like honestly like super impressive. The way he just like turns the corner, like the way he just lowers his shoulder and like gets all the way down to the floor. Like he does some very interesting stuff, but it's just It
Okay,
feels it
so
feels.
if Jakob Poeltl was Rudy Gobert,
Mhm.
hypothetically, so that's a massive, massive lift to your defense. Like that's an immediate, now
Oh
you're a
yeah,
top,
then
you're a
then
top
RJ
14
would
defense.
be more.
Now I think
He,
RJ can be a really good starter for you.
yeah, he becomes more effective.
Exactly. Because all of his pressure and blow-bys are now cleaned up by an elite rim protector. I think Jakob Poeltl, I flagged it when he was traded for us. He's highly overrated as a defender.
Yeah, I saw. I didn't see the entire Hornets game. I saw the fourth quarter. I saw Nick Richards just go right through his chest and finish a layup, and I was just like, "This is
That's a
Nick
backup big.
Richards. This
That's
is
a
Nick
backup big.
Richards."
Exactly. Nick Richards is trash.
Yeah,
He's a
I
really
mean,
bad player.
come on, Jakob, and I really like Jakob. Like he's so sound.
He is.
Like I love players like him. He doesn't really complain. He doesn't ask for the ball. He's just always there. He's just good. But it's like,
But let's be real. In an ideal world, he's a backup big.
yeah, he's a high level backup big.
He's like the highest level backup
Yeah,
big.
he's like the
So
best possible.
right. So that's the point. Is like, okay. So okay, now that we're going down the list, is Immanuel Quickley a starting level point guard for you?
Uh, I think so. I think he hasn't shown it like throughout a full season, but I see it. But I guess if you're asking me, has he shown it so far? Probably not.
You are very smart. Okay. So I think IQ will be a starting point guard.
Yeah, I
Like
see it as well. I see it.
definitively, I think he's going to be a starting point guard. I think Grady's a starter in the league. I really do. I see like I was really high on him last year. I didn't think this jump was going to come this soon. I thought,
I still think there's some more up and downs for him though. Like he's gonna have some bad stink. Like he's still there's still some improvement to me improvement that needs to be made. But I see starter in maybe by next year,
yeah,
like a quality impact starter.
Tariq saying Pirtle or Drummond. This is not close. It's 100% Pirtle.
It's
Drummond
Pearl,
is
yeah,
shit.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's Pearl.
yeah. Deshane saying, I think RJ will become an all-star under Rap's development. Remember, I said this. Mark me on it. Clock turquoise looking up. Oh, Deshane.
The only thing that he's improved so far is efficiency, and his game requires so much more than efficiency to become an all star.
Yeah, the reason his efficiency has improved is because shot quality has improved in Toronto. Like the shot quality in Toronto for everybody is awesome. And he is a really good scorer. But please understand, RJ is by the most generous definition a bust so far in his career. He has been remotely positive in Toronto. There is a really good chance that he can turn it around, but there is a limit to how much better he can get with his game, with how he processes the game. I think the best version of this is a third option on a good team with a lot of defense around him. So the question then becomes, do you know a lot of teams that will compensate for a non-specialist third option? There aren't a lot. There
Yeah,
aren't a lot.
there's not.
That's why the Knicks want guys like Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. Not that those guys are all stars. It's just because you don't have to compensate shit for them. It's why that's why you value guys like Josh Hart because you don't have to compensate for him. And I think Josh Hart is a highly overrated defender, but he is the guy who just kind of holds his own on both ends. If you're going to be a scorer and you're not going to be a defender and you're not going to be like a high level 3-point shooter, which again RJ has not proven. Like 2 games into the season, he's been a high level 3-point shooter. 50%, 9 attempts per game, 9 attempts per 100 possessions. He's awesome. He's awesome. Awesome. He needs to keep this up. I think what he provides is very valuable for the Raptors right now, which is just scoring, elevating, putting buckets. Plenty of guys in the league who do this, man. Jaden Hardy with the Mavericks, really good at this, playing on the bench. Cam Thomas in Brooklyn, really good at this. Jalen Green, really good at this. These guys are a dime a dozen. There's a lot of them around the league. There's even more of them in the G League. There's a lot of guys who can score. Maybe not nearly to the level of RJ, but I mean, what Lil John said is true. There are limits to how he scores. It's not like he's on an island one on one and he's carving his defender apart like DeMar DeRozan. He's not
Yeah,
doing that.
yeah, he's not. There's nothing like he's not doing nothing like isolation wise. It's very team oriented the way he scores. It
Yeah.
tries in transition and cutting. I do have one question I wanted to ask before I go. let's just say Scotty comes back in 3 weeks.
Mhm.
The team, let's say in those 3 weeks they go like two. That might even be generous. Let's just say they win maybe a couple games.
Okay.
Are you like, okay, let's start winning? Like, what is your mindset as a fan, or what do you want to see them to do right when it
All I
comes?
want to
Because
see is these three together. I just want
you
to
just,
see what this looks
you just
like.
want to see it.
I want to see what RJ plus Scotty plus this version of Grady plus this version of IQ, because I think IQ is leveled up. I've been watching him all summer. There were three guys, well, two guys in the league that I was just like, these guys are about to have explosive years. Immanuel Quickley and Evan Mobley. To me, like tracking their shit this summer, I was like, these guys are on a different energy right now. Like they're coming out to like shut everybody up. I'm very sad for Immanuel Quickley that his, possible, sub all-star type of campaign, like where he comes out and averages 25 points per game, was undercut literally by Darius Garland. But I do think that he is gonna be like crazy spacing. Now we remember what Scotty did in his rookie season with Fred VanVleet. That that deep spacing just wasn't there with Dennis Schroeder. And Scotty thrived last year. Thrived. It's not a secret. It's not a crazy conspiracy to me that the minute RJ came back, Scotty had his best game. That's not shocking to me. RJ is just way better than
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Ochai and Grady right now as a scorer. So, you know what I mean? Like put Immanuel Quickley in there as well, and then see does Scotty blossom into like a 9 box plus minus type of guy? Because if he does, you're going to be a playoff team.
So you're still holding out hope that they can hold down the fort until he comes back?
I'm
Is that
holding
kind of
out.
what you're thinking?
I'm thinking they need to go 5 and 12 over the first 17 without Scotty. So they need to eke out 4 wins somewhere. Now you're saying 2. I'm saying they need to find 4. I don't know
Yeah.
how the fuck they're gonna find 4, but if they can go 5, if they can go 5 and 12, I think it's even 4 and 13. It's like it's not impossible to come back from. There's a lot of teams that are struggling right now. There's a lot of teams that are injured, right? There's 10 playoff spots, playing, whatever, right? And again, if you're peaking at the right time and you encounter like a Chicago that's kind of falling apart at 9, I mean, you could beat them in the play-in. Again, the play-in is like it's an interesting, way to look at it, because from an MLSE perspective, that keeps fans engaged through the rest of the year. They've kind of shown, the propensity to kind of go for that. You're a super young team. I just don't believe in tanking for young teams. That's sort of like, once you have your franchise player, once you have your supporting pieces, I'm not trying to be greedy. You know what I mean? Like I tried the tankathon thing yesterday. We were second. We ended up at fifth, sixth, fifth, sixth, fifth, sixth, like 100 times. So I'm just like, you know what? Like, am I willing to throw an entire season away for that? Because we're not going to be second. We could be like fifth, right? And then at that point, we can get jumped by like 4 teams and end up at ninth. That was worth the whole damn season. That was worth 18 wins and shutting down Scotty and shutting down Emmanuel Quickly. I think the new lottery odds have greatly de-incentivized tanking. Case in
So
point, Atlanta won the draft last year with the ninth record. So you
so
could you
like
could make the play in. Literally, you can make the play in, get bounced in the play in, and still get the first overall pick. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's possible. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting to like looking forward if they ask Scotty to sit out and he's like, "Bro, I just came back like 2 months ago. I want to play." And it's like mid-March and he's like and they're asking him, "Hey, you want to sit out these last 2 weeks?" That'd be pretty interesting. Like
I mean, Scott.
I wonder how
I
he
feel like
react to that.
Scotty's not unreasonable. You know what I mean? Like if all NBA is on the line, that's a different story. But if all NBA is not on the line and the season is gone,
But you're
he's not
missing reps though.
stupid. No, I understand that. I get that. But
Like
please know he could have come back last year.
when OKC was doing that to SGA, like I'm sure he was like, I get it, but like, man, I'm about to be an MVP. Like I'm missing reps.
So first of all, like the good thing about Scotty is you don't have to sell him on team development. You know what I mean? Like I feel like he's just intuitively, from what I gather, he's one of those guys that is like, what's good for the team, I'll do, you know? And that's a little bit like what Tim Duncan was like, right? So if you tell him, honestly, and you say, listen, like we are out of the playoffs. We're mathematically eliminated. There's no shot. We're not in the play-in picture. We're nothing. We're like an 18 win team. We're like, so if you play right now against these depleted teams, you're going to win these games and it's going to mean nothing. But if you don't play, we might be able to get you like a real star in the draft. What do you want to do? I think that can be a partnership kind of decision with him. But at the last final 2 weeks, I don't think he's going to push for it. Honestly, if all NBA is off the table, if playing is off the table, there's no push. It's totally different though if playing is in the table or playoffs are on the table and you're in like February and you're like Scotty Barnes, you want to sit for 2 months. I don't think he'd be cool with that. So it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, it's
Yeah.
I'm gonna head out right now. I have to go somewhere, but yeah, thanks for
All right.
having me on, man.
Cool. My pleasure. Take care. See ya. All right. Thanks a lot to Lil John, and thanks a lot to a lot of you for calling in. That was a pretty insightful, hopefully insightful episode. If it was insightful for you, please give this video a like. This is not shade on anybody. This is not shade on Jakob Pertl, calling him, maybe ideally in the ideal form, not a typical starting center. I do think whoever your starting center is going to be when you're in a championship, it's probably not going to be him. Maybe he's your backup at that point. Maybe he's a veteran backup, kind of like Thad or Otto or someone like that. Okay. He's serviceable. 20 minutes of Jakob per night off the bench, great. 32 minutes of a non-spacing big who's not an elite rim protector, that's not great. RJ Barrett, same thing. Will RJ Barrett be on the championship team, when the Raptors start contending for championships? I have no idea. I have no idea. But one player we haven't talked about this entire episode, or two players we haven't talked about this entire episode, Jacoby and Orish. And you know what? I believe in these two kids enough. I understand there's some limits to Orish's experience, limits to Jacoby's theoretical potential. Some people think maybe he's not enough of an athlete. I see a smooth movement shooter. Someone mentioned Chris Middleton. I see a lot of potential Chris Middleton in Jacoby Walter, right? So you never know what these kids are going to become. They are the youngest players, and it would be hard for me to believe that the three rookies that we've seen have been so good, but the two we haven't seen are going to be so ass, right? We've seen enough from Ulrich. We've seen enough from Ulrich in summer league for you to like salivate on that potential for years, right? And wait for it to happen and materialize. We've heard from his trainer talking about him as a person, him wanting to build hospitals in Africa. There's no player on this team that's a lie. There's no rookie on this team that I am more convinced of in terms of like they will do whatever it takes than Ulrich. Okay, that's no knock on anybody. That's no knock, and I'm very, very high on Jonathan Mogbo, very high on Jamal Shed. I've been raving about these guys. I think like our Twitter posts on them have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, and there's a reason for that. I want to support them. There's no doubt in my mind that Jameson Battle is a very serious-minded person. And I think Jameson Battle is your CJ Miles. I think he's like your 10th, 11th guy that you put on when you need some scoring and you need some spacing and he knocks down a couple threes for you. This is a very valuable role player. You found all of these in one summer. It's incredible what the Raptors have done. But it just so happens that they keep putting their fucking salt in the cake. Bruno Fernando, man. All right. Talk to y'all later. Have a good one.